Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to You Are Your Brand. Let's talk. I am so excited to see you today. It is always a joy and an opportunity and a blessing and an honor to be with you. So thank you for tuning in. Once again, my name is Felicia Shakespeare, and we are here every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. So we're here to talk about what? Personal development and professional growth strategies, as well as just everyday living. I think a lot of times when we talk about branding, the emphasis I'm constantly making is you can't separate you from the brand, right? A lot of times people want to have a brand and promote a brand, but ultimately you are the foundation of the brand. And of course, what I love about branding and about just being a personal brand is the fact that so many individuals are talented. Many times our natural talent, what we have been gifted by God to do, is at the forefront, right, of our brand. So many of us have talents and gifts that were truly God-given, whether we are in the speaking profession, whether we are an athlete, whether we are a singer. Now, you all know we've seen the folks on American Idol that really weren't supposed to be there. Can I get a witness? But they had a desire, but not necessarily the talent and the skill set. But ultimately, once again, who we are and how we represent ourselves and the gifts and really the talents that we bring to the world represent us. So what is personal development? Again, it's becoming better. It's becoming the best version of who you are. I honestly believe that sometimes we are innately born with gifts and talents, but on the flip side, there are other things that we have to develop and create. And I always use this term: you could earn a degree, but you can't buy a personality, right? So who you are really does emanate and come through in every part of your life, no matter what you're doing. So thank you again for tuning in. So last week we had a wonderful discussion about just having a balanced life, work-life balance, body, mind, and spirit, and how building the foundation of our brand is so critical. One of the key components, and prior to that, we have been talking about key strategies or key ways to leverage your brand. And today I want to talk about a particular area that doesn't get a lot of pub, I would say, nowadays, and that's called integrity. You can type it in the chat. Type the word integrity, integrity. And specifically, integrity is a non-negotiable. That's what I want to talk about to your brand. Integrity is a non-negotiable. So as you're building the foundation, as you made those steps to become balanced in your body and in your mind and in your spirit, now we have to act on all those things that have been worked on and groomed and developed and perfected. But guess what? Integrity. Now it's gonna stand. Your brand will stand based on the level of integrity that you have. So what is integrity? I always had my own definition of integrity. And by the way, that was actually the name of my first business. I'll never forget, back in 2001, when I was all pumped up with entrepreneurship and the idea to become an entrepreneur and just start what we call a side hustle, right? The name of my business was Integrity Incorporated. Integrity International Incorporated. And why did I choose that name? Because for me, a business name really purports a lot of what that mission is about. And I just felt at the time, integrity is everything, right? Integrity is everything. So what is my definition of integrity? My definition of integrity is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And what does that mean? That is irrespective of what others think. But it's totally connected to how you believe and how you navigate with the way you believe and live your life, right? So once again, it's not something that is necessarily I say it has to be taught. I'll say it like that. I wouldn't say you were necessarily born with it, but you learn it, right? You learn it through how you are taught as a child. It starts as a youth. honestly, when you have the teachers and individuals, I know there's programs in school called character counts. I know that's one that comes to my mind right now. But just if you don't realize it, a lot of what educators do on a daily basis is actually less connected to subject, but it's more connected to behavior and reinstilling into students how to do things, how to work in groups, how to communicate correctly with their teachers and adults. And it's a whole dynamic. And a lot of parents felt that pain, right? When they had to stay home during COVID-19 and really be the one leading out their child's daily regimen, they got to see, wow, these teachers really are doing a whole lot. If someone's with your child all day, clearly they are making an impact. And when I think about my childhood, I was actually talking to one of my childhood friends last week. We went way back in the day, and actually we were friends. We were best friends in kindergarten, and we're still in touch. Isn't that a blessing? And we were just speaking of the fact that of some of the teachers that impacted us. And I never forget this one teacher in third grade. It wasn't anything I can remember that she taught me, but it's how she treated me, right? How she made me believe in myself. And I just like, wow, I really would like to get a hold of her even right now. And I heard I'm going to make that happen, guys, this summer. I'm going to actually try to reach out to her. But long and short, who would have thought that a third grade teacher would have that much impact? So when I think about integrity, once again, it's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And beyond that, when you're thinking of a personal brand, you are going to be known for certain things, right? Outside of how you look, outside of what you purport, what you do and how you navigate your business is really the key. How you navigate yourself, how you carry yourself, right? The character that you have, those are critical keys. And like I said, I know this is not necessarily the most popular message now because, wow, we just want to do it by any means necessary. That's what society has taught us, right? To just climb and whatever it takes. But it can't be whatever it takes. Now, I say whatever it takes in the sense of what you have to do and strive to be. But as far as how you go about it, that's what integrity entails. So some of the key points I want to talk about when we talk about integrity as a non-negotiable is building. There's several things. Once again, when you're building a brand, right, you're building a name, right? It's all about building, right? You're creating a reputation. You're creating a level of people understanding how to navigate with you in relationships. It's about relationships. And I always say this, it's not necessarily what we do, it's always how we do it, right? It's always how we go about doing things. And when I say, so let's think of a business relationship, even keeping the lines of communication open and making sure that you actually articulate and communicate what's going on. How you do that is critical, right? Because that builds a certain level, which leads into my next point. It leads, your actions builds trust, right? So the first thing is what? It's building our name. People, we're all known for something, right? Everyone, Coke is known for something. We think of even a specific business brand. We think of Coke, or you think of McDonald's, or you think of even go back to, let's just say, our everyday lives. So those are what we call the big brands, right? But when we think of the people we deal with, when we think of our pastor, when we think of our grandmother, there's something about these individuals from one spectrum to another that triggers a thought in our head, right? So how we are perceived, write that down. How we are perceived is critical. What are you wanting to project as your message, right? Your message is as far as the persona that you want people to walk away with. I promise you, no matter what that is, the underlying success of that will be integrity. How you navigate, how you do things, right? Are doing things the right way. I think about, once again, building trust, right? Our actions are critical, and even how, there was a time in the world where people told us what your word is your bond. What you say is important, and the commitment that you make. There was a time, Of course we have to get written contracts. And now what we do it digitally, we do DocuSign and we have to get it in writing. Even yesterday I had to do some things, with my employees, even though I communicated some things to them, even though I've spoken to some things to them about some things that need to happen, I had to get it in writing. I said, you know what, we're not going to assume, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just going to speak about integrity. There was a time when your word was simply your bond. Who remembers those movies or those times when you had your parents, how they navigated business? Sometimes just a mere handshake, was enough, for us to consider an agreement valid, right? But now you can't, it's almost like, I'm gonna be very honest with you. People have memory recall problems. Who's been in situations now where people just have some memory recall problems? It's like, are we getting amnesia? And I'll even go as far as saying this. The reason why I initiated the signing of this document, even with my employees yesterday on this particular subject matter, is I spoke about it and I said it again. And it was just like, after all that, the individual, my particular individual, I'll say, it wasn't everybody, turned around and just did what they wanted to do. Like, it was just like, I went back, did you actually hear, you remember we talked about that? But just so all minds are clear, we have to do those measures, based on the relationships that we want to have and navigate. But once again, integrity is a non-negotiable. So when I think about, once again, integrity, another piece is building the trust, right? People will have no problem in most instances supporting you if they can trust you, right? Trust is such a commodity nowadays. Even as I look at our news media, that's one form of a way that we choose to trust, right? How stories are presented. But who's ever seen those stories? Sometimes you'll come back and you'll find out that maybe that wasn't all of the story. That was just a part of the story. So really, a part of the branding, part of integrity is, like I said, is communication. So you have to find out and just determine what method works for you. Like I said back in the day, and there are some relationships that I can honestly say that I would probably not have a problem. They're especially particularly in my family, I can go with a verbal, it doesn't have to be in written. But let me tell you all something. As I think about my dad, God rest his soul, my father, when it came down to business matters, it was non-negotiable. It was just like we were people on the street. It didn't matter that I was his daughter, and I'll never forget the time that there was one particular purchase I wanted to make. Particularly, it was a purchase of a vehicle, and I had this dream vehicle in mind. And now I'm in adulthood now, probably my 20s. Long and short, I came up a little short, just with what I needed to do for the transaction. And my dad, of course, if you all never heard me talk about, a lot of what I'm, a lot of who I am and what I'm representing is what was instilled in me as a child. And I always talk about my dad. One thing about my dad, he was no nonsense. It was just like, no, it didn't take a lot for him. But at the same time, when he was fixated on something, he was going to achieve it. And one thing he was always fixated on, non-negotiable, was his credit. And you were never going to sway him to do anything to impair his credit. So, and what did he always told us? He always told us, don't sign anything for people. Don't let people use your car. Who heard that back in the day? Don't let people use your car, and always get it in writing. So back to my point, my dad, he actually wrote up a contract for me for this vehicle. It was like, okay, well, you know what? You're going to pay me. I'm going to be the bank. I said, okay, wow, that's awesome. But people would think, oh, because I was daddy's girl, being the only girl, by the way, by default and just by choice, it was not something that he let any of us get away with. So we all would have to do agreements with my father in writing, and we would have to pay him, and we would actually have to pay him interest. So isn't that amazing? But back to my point, And one other thing, the aspect of, and I've already said this, your word being your bond. He was the one who also taught us, him and my mother, about the fact that if you have something to articulate, whether it's good or not good, don't run from your responsibility, right? You have to be accountable. And I think that's a part of integrity, right? Accountability, right? So even as a person, this is what we're talking about, right? What are we talking about? Well, you are your brand. We're talking about personal development and professional growth, both as a person, a career professional, and an entrepreneur. These are our topics. You have to be able to keep your word and communicate when it's not easiest. How many times have you seen people just abandon their responsibility? They will abandon, their car. They'll abandon their car note, or abandon a building or a place. That's not how you do business, right? So even as someone, having been in not always situations where it was favorable at a particular season. It was just like, it was the hardest thing to do, but you have to talk to people, right? You have to articulate and communicate where you are, so that is a critical piece of being and walking in integrity, being a non-negotiable, right? Ethics, right? Another part of it, when I think of integrity, once again, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I want to actually share the definition of ethics that I located today. So what is ethics? Moral principles that govern a person's behavior. I'll start right there. Moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So that is critical. How we, once again, it goes right along with what I'm saying. Integrity being a non-negotiable, it impacts our relationships. It impacts our names, and it impacts, once again, the trust level that we build both in our personal and professional lives. But when I think about ethics, once again, these are things, that are not things that you necessarily learn. I think you do learn them depending on your career. There are some careers like being a lawyer, of course, and of course being a police officer, being an educator. There are certain careers that kind of point you towards those directions. But I just want to reiterate, the fact that is something so critical. Ethics impacts the behavior, once again, of how we do things, when we do things, and the way we do things. Once again, thinking about how, we're in our reckoning period here in our country, right? We are reckoning just a lot of things that have been done improperly to certain groups of people, minority groups and women. There are things that have been done over the years, and not just have they been done, they've been done when we're speaking of having contracts and laws and things in writing. The reckoning we're in now is with the voting law, right? What to do, what's right and what's not right. And it's amazing that it's literally like we're in two different worlds in the USA right now. I just feel like, you have people that are on one side or the other, and I'm not here to promote a political party, but when all the smoke clears, who would not agree with me that a lot of this has to do with integrity, right? At the end of the day, integrity is not saying one thing on a camera. Who's seen that a lot in this last year? By government officials. I mean, they will literally be on tape, on film, saying one thing and doing another, right? Making one promise and then literally within the same week or within a day or a shorter period of time going back on that promise. So I just think, once again, it goes back to the attributes of what we're talking about. Once again, when we're talking about the fact that it's non-negotiable, to have integrity in your brand, that really goes back to creating and becoming the person that God wanted you to be. So how do we get those things corrected, right? What do we need to do? Well, I'm going to say first and foremost, you cannot do it alone. It takes practice, right? It takes intentionality. Intentionality. So I'll just say that, to write that down, it takes intentionality. As I think about it, when you want to be and walk in integrity, you have to be intentional about it. You have to literally go out of your way. And I know people sometimes think I over communicate, and that's okay. I'd rather over communicate than under communicate, so you can get an understanding, right, of where I'm coming from. Now, that's just my personality. You don't have to be like me. You don't have to be like Felicia, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So for me, having the opportunity to put it out there, both verbally and in writing. And I also will say this: the intentionality to follow up is also a critical part of it. So first of all, the intentionality to have integrity, to want to do the right thing, and then putting in the processes to follow up. Even as a brand, always follow up, always make the call back, always respond to the email, always, just be on the up and up, right? If you couldn't do something, or if you can't do something, communicate it, right? You have to be on, for lack of better terms, the up and up, right? You have to keep things. And a lot of times, guess what? Most people that really believe in integrity, for the most part, you feel like their life is an open book. They make you feel like, I don't have anything to hide from you. Now, what kind of scares me is when I'm dealing with people who's saying one thing and purporting something else, and then I'm discerning and picking up, I hear what you're saying. I hear the words, but it's something about integrity, right? It's something about that non-negotiable piece that involves our ethics, which involves our level of how we develop relationships. Look at someone's life. We always hear even the term. I've heard this before. If you're struggling in the struggle with your marriage, just give an example. Don't take advice from someone who's been divorced 5, 10 times, right? Why does that make any sense? If your goal is to maintain and create a stronger bond, why am I listening to some? Check the creds, right? Check the credentials. I'm not, and I wouldn't say, of course, someone that's not married. Of course, there's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and revelation that can come from anyone that God wants to use. But at the end of the day, what did that say? I'm not saying that person doesn't have integrity, but I would say that you have to be very conscientious and intentional about who you are allowing in certain parts of your life to guide you. That's the word I'm looking for, to guide you. God bless, maybe that person is going to be fruitful to someone else in another way, of maybe survival tips or something. But if you are literally wanting to grow something, you almost have to look for a model. What is it? Who are you drawn to? What is this whole term? Birds of a feather flock together. Many times, I've seen individuals in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, why are they? How could they be so connected with that person when the reputation or whatever? But guess what? Watch it. That's already a signal. If you see people hooked up, at the end of the day, there's something that's drawing them commonly together. And I'm a true believer, that you will navigate and gravitate towards like-minded individuals. So that's so critical. But once again, back to our point, integrity is a non-negotiable when you're building your name, right? I never forget, one of my favorite lines from Shakespeare, what's in the name, right? Everything. That's even in one of the chapters here. And I do have it today, my book. Guys, I got the copy. You Are Your Brand, Building from the Inside Out. But that is one of the chapters that I wrote in this book. And it's actually chapter 3. I'm going to read a little bit of page 39. What's in the name? Brand is all about presentation, presentation, presentation. One of the greatest questions posed to one of the world's most famous writers, William Shakespeare. And it was what? He said, what's in a name, from the famous poetic tragedy, Romeo and Juliet, where one of his most famous questions is posed, what's in a name? And I went on to say, I'm certain some of you may have asked where Shakespeare was going with this statement, or was it actually since this is a famous line written for Juliet, one of the main characters from the story, the history behind this famous line in its context would be the scene where Juliet is letting Romeo know that although their families are particularly at war with one another, she will not let this deter her from her love for him. So anyway, there's more to this. But at the end of the day, your name is key. It represents you. It's the central point of reference of who you are or what you represent as a person, product, or organization. So I just want to read a little bit of that. But long and short, everything. You know, when we think of Steve Jobs, right? There's something about that name. We think of what? We automatically associate him with Apple. When I think of Macy's, you know, I think of a high quality product. When we think of Oprah, you know, when we think of certain people, certain actors, Denzel Washington, there's just a certain picture. We automatically, as I just said, all those names, something flashed before you, right? So your name is everything, just as a quick recap. So why integrity is non-negotiable. Building your name is everything. And of course, the relationships that you build are directly and keenly connected to how you are representing yourself. The second point I made today was about trust, building trust, and what our actions and our words lining up. Those are the factors of trust. And lastly, the third point was around ethics. Our moral character and how we conduct ourselves in what we're doing. So, and as I started out saying today, it's not always what you do, it's how you do it. You know, most of us are, you know, like I said, we're very open, you know, to individuals. You know, there's one side that says never judge a book by its cover from that perspective. But then there's the other side. Was that famous other line? When people show you who they are, believe them. You know, so it's just ways to you know, once again navigate the process of personal rating. But I want you to once again think about your integrity meter. How are you measuring up right now? What can you improve on? And like I was saying before, the critical component is the foundation of the word, for me, the word of God. You know, I think that's the greatest map that we can ever use to guide us when we are stuck. That has been my roadmap to actually reassess and go back. And so when God deals with me about a situation, I promise you, and when he deals with you, if you're really listening, 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 10, he's going to show you first and the things you have to work on. So I always love this little thing I came up with. Don't point the finger, point the thumb. So what is it? You know, so now we're getting on to the part of how to improve. So what can I do to improve? Once again, take a integrity meter today. Are in those areas of what? Of your name and the relationships you're building, in the areas of your actions and word, in your areas of ethics. How would you measure that? You know, once again, our baseline, you know, we have to have a baseline, right? We have to have a starting point, a foundation. And once again, you can never go wrong with the word of God. That is our firm foundation, our tool, our book of principles. Also, you know, watching the folks that you look up to, you know, and also I'll say this, sometimes the people that are in our lives, those truth tellers, I'll call them our truth tellers, right? Those are the ones when they talk to you, you just want to cringe sometimes because every time you know they're right, but it's something in you that's, so that's the kind of mentor you want to have, right? That's the kind of relationships you want to build too, you know. So once again, using a baseline, like I said, I highly recommend the Word of God. There are other tools and resources out there, but that's the one I would start with, especially as a believer. Your best example is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He will always be the headliner, right? If you want to know how your life is doing, you look at him, and you'll be able to read a lot through that. The second thing, like I said, there are so many resources out here. We talked about that last week. We're in the digital age. Look at books on that. You know, find out who are the top resources for those areas. Like I said, I highly recommend this book, my book, not just because it's my book, but because of the nature of the experiences and the fact that it does deal with that area and so much more through your development. So resources of personal development is my second recommendation. And like I said, my third recommendation is who are those voices in your life? Who is that person? You need accountability, right? We have to be accountable. We have to put ourselves in the position where, you know what, it doesn't matter how old you are. You know, you have to be in a place where someone can actually show you and tell you and speak the truth to you. And that sometimes the truth is the hardest pill to swallow. But guess what? We already know it's going to make us free, right? It's going to make us better. It's going to help us become all that we were intended to be, all that God prepared for us. And through that, so once again, through your baseline of the word, the resources, and just putting yourself in the position of accountability, you only will become better, the best version of yourself. And guess what? Don't be too hard on yourself. It takes time. Thank God for the changes that He's already made in you. You know, I look at my life now and I think there was a time that I was moved by some things that now I'm not moved. You know, I'm firm. It's solid, right? But that took time, right? It took age, it took growth, it took development, it took a lot of trial and error. It took just time to develop, you know. And don't go by your feelings so much. A lot of times we let our feelings get in our way of our personal growth because feelings come and go, right? But you want to stay firm, right, on what actions I need to take, regardless if I feel like making that call or not, to live up to my commitment. I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to write anyway. It's not how I feel. It's what I know is right and the right thing to do. So thank you again for tuning in to You Are Your Brand today. I really hope that you were able to take away some nuggets and some principles and strategies to help you become better and just the best version of who God intended for you to be. And if you would like to stay in touch with me, please remember you can follow me on social media at Felicia Shakespeare. Also, my website is FeliciaShakespeare.com, my full name.com. And you can also order the book there too if you're interested in getting it today, or also through Amazon and wherever books are sold. There's also an e-version of the book if you want to download it and get it right away. It will help you. I assure you, God is really still moving in this book project too. And I want to thank you once again for tuning in today. Please, once again, join me every single Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on the She Is Still Dope network, right? She Is Still Dope.tv, the first purpose-driven women network. I really thank you for being here. God bless you. And until next time, have a wonderful day. See you next week.